heard this morning already about the career implications that we're all facing. We've heard about the childcare crisis, and we've dug into inequality. And now it's time to think about the employer side of this equation. And I'm particularly interested in this topic because, as I already mentioned, I have a company called Lions and Tigers. So I'm a small business owner myself. We're a consultancy that builds bridges for marketers, for business coaches, for business strategists, and we enable part-time work. So I'm particularly interested in times when courage is called in to think about keeping caretakers in our workforce. That's the work that we deeply do. And when I get to be in community with panelists like this, I think we all feel emboldened by this idea that caretakers may be a strategic advantage to our organizations. So let me invite you to meet these four panelists because they are so brilliant. I've been so impressed with their work so far. So the folks that I want you to meet today are Carson Wagner. He is the VP of People at Maven Clinic, a leading women's and family healthcare company with a very unique perspective. Caitlin Holloway, our founding partner of a company not yet announced, but Caitlin is an HR executive turned venture capitalist. Kara Brennan Alamano, the SVP of People, Places, and Learning at Udemy, one of the largest skilling platforms on the globe. And Rob Master, the VP of Media and Digital Engagement at Unilever. Good morning, panelists.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. I think the question that's on everyone's mind right now is this the moment that will inspire business leaders to change the way that we attract, retain, and support working parents? That's been the theme this morning, is what are we all being called in to do? So I want to start with some deeper introductions. So I'm going to ask you all kind of an entry question as you get introduced to our audience, which is, tell us a little bit about your work and your family, and what are the stakes for your community right now? So Caitlin, let's start with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited and honored to be on this panel. I think this is such an important topic. And all of the panelists and all of the content already this morning has just been so phenomenal. So I'm very grateful to be here. Let's see, a little bit about me. So my family, in my bunker, I have my 6-year-old, freshly minted 6-year-old, Luca, who is in kindergarten, and little Juno, who's only 2. So mom to 2 boys. We are here in San Francisco, and we've taken our quarantine very, very seriously. So we have been in this bunker for 200 days now. So congratulations to anyone else that has done that as well. And then as for work, Bria, you mentioned a very cryptic introduction about me and the work that I do, but I'll give you a little bit more background here. So I did decide to start at the beginning of the year to shake things up and shift my career. Awesome timing, but it's been really, really amazing so far. But I left behind a decade of operating as a senior people and culture executive in tech for the world of venture capital. So I've been working really closely with my longtime business partner and dear friend, also the co-founder of Reddit, Alexis Ohanian. So he is a massive voice in the world of parental inclusion, particularly around leave. So it's really, really been a great run. We've worked together now for 5 years, and now we're on the investing side of the world together. So as an investor, I care deeply about HR technology, women's health, and of course, family and community tech. That's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin. Rob, I'd love to go to you next. Tell us about your family, your work, and what the stakes are for your community right now.
All right, so Rob Master. First, let me say thank you for inviting me back. I was at your kind of spring or early summer event, so it's great to be back. So thanks for having me. I'm a father of 2 teenage boys, 13 and 15. I am married. My wife works full time. She had a busy summer. She works for the Ellen DeGeneres show, so no shortage of excitement over the past couple months. She does it from New York, not in LA. So that's been certainly an exciting summer for the both of us. And I've been at Unilever for coming on over 18 years now. Fortunate to be in an organization like that and having so many different opportunities my career has spanned an array of brand marketing jobs. I worked in shopper marketing and spent the past decade working in our media, leading our media organization in both U.S. and global roles, and now currently operating in the U.S. And so I'm proud to be part of the Unilever family. And we've been obviously very focused, as is my personal family, on the COVID experience. And actually, you referenced Alexi. He's a partner of Dove Men Plus Cares, who actually been kind of championing paternity leave. So excited to get into that. So thanks for having me.
I'm excited to dig in with you, Rob. Karsten, I'd love to have you introduce yourself and your work and your family.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. And I'm in New York, so I've been awake a little bit longer than some of you. My husband and I have a daughter who is about to turn 4. She's very excited about this. She may actually be joining me for part of this, so you never know. I lead the people team at Maven. It's the world's largest virtual clinic for women's and family health. And what we do is we work with employers and health plans to support women and families with evidence-based, substantive support throughout the journeys of planning, starting, and raising a family. And I was really thinking about what you asked, Bria, in terms of what's at stake, right? The first thing when I think of what's at stake in my community is our 150 employees, but I'm also thinking about the 5 million women and families that we've supported since we started in 2014. And my goodness, what's at stake for them is mental health, right? We're seeing today a 300% increase in mental health appointments at Maven over the past 7 months. And we recently commissioned a survey of 1,000 US parents, and we found out that nearly 60% of working parents do not feel supported by their employer as they navigate childcare challenges. So also, when I think about what's at stake for those of us on this panel, and then maybe those of us watching too, is trust and credibility, and ultimately, I think the health and success of our businesses.
So well said. Karsten, I can't wait to ask you some questions about that.
Thanks.
Kara, I want to invite you in too to talk about your work at Udemy.
Yeah, I'd love to share a little bit about what we do. I head up the people, places, and learning function at Udemy, and we are the world's largest private learning company. And we have 30 million folks that learn on our platform. And equally as important, we have 130,000 instructors that teach on our platform. And we believe in the democratization of learning. And we've seen a huge acceleration in the usage of Udemy, both for individuals as well as businesses during the COVID crisis. And why do I think that is? I think that when people are going through times of uncertainty, they rely on learning to help get them through, because learning is a way for them to plan for their future, as well as to give themselves more options in the present. And when I think about why families are so important, it's why for us as an employer, families are so important. It's because what do our employees care about? They care about their friends and family. They care about the future for themselves and their friends and family. And if we're going to support our employees, we've got to support the people around them. So we've done a lot of work to build additional benefit plans, to provide support to managers, to help them understand how to care for their extended their employees, and help understand the new relationship that we all have between work and home, and help them navigate that, and help our employees navigate that directly. And we're still learning. There's a lot of work to be done. And part of me being a part of this panel and learning from Mother, honestly, is I want to hear what other people are doing, because I think we're all in that place on the people side of business where we want to be helpful. And there is no blanket solution that we're gonna find. We're gonna have to put a lot of different pieces together to make sure that that our employees and their families' individual needs are taken care of.
I love the idea about caring for our people's people. Such a great concept. I will share too. I have 2 sons. I have a 4.5-year-old and a almost 2-year-old, and I am in my 3rd trimester. So you can't see, but there's a big down here. I'm 9 weeks out from a little girl that's coming. So mad props to all of you. We're all in this together. Okay, so let's dig into the topic that I just have to kick off with, which is flexibility. This is the idea that is on everyone's mind right now. And if you look at stats, like 96% of employees say that they need flexibility, and women are reporting that only 34% of them have access to the flexibility that they need. It's a tremendous gap. And then what's even more staggering is that 51% of employees would leave their job for a more flexible alternative. So if you think about this as a retention strategy or even a recruitment strategy, Carson, I want to come to you because, knowing the stakes of flexibility, and thank you so much for quantifying for us in the community that you're serving. I'm so curious how Maven Link is thinking about these flexibility practices and how we embed that in our company culture. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I think that maybe the worst thing we can do as people leaders is tell our company, be flexible without any direction or guidance beyond that. Like Kara said before, there's no one silver bullet to fix the state of the world today, right? I think it's going to be a suite of solutions, even ones that feel relatively small, rather than this kind of one-size-fits-all solution. And something that I've learned over the past 7 months is right now, especially with school starting, we have to give people that green light again. We have to remind people that they have the permission to get that flexibility, right? And what does that look like tactically at Maven? Do you need to be in the meeting that you're in? And can we send agendas in advance to know that in advance? How do we make sure that people don't feel like they need to respond immediately to Slack, right? That they're tied to their laptops, tied to their home offices, their phones all day. And it's just small reminders, small little etiquette reminders on how to manage your day when you're working from home, which can so easily feel like you're living at work. We also think about core hours and asynchronous work. And for our managers, asking them to find the goals that can be shifted or adjusted where they can, right? Something personally that I've learned is not to make assumptions. And I'll give you an example of that. We got all of our parents together in a cohort, something we'd never done before. And I went in, even as a parent, thinking, wow, if Maven can just give everybody a Disney Plus account, we'll solve the whole problem, right? How do we distract the kids during the workday? And that wasn't the answer at all, right? What our parents were asking for was support from non-parents, support from their managers, a little more understanding that they're going to be late sometimes, that they can't make every meeting, that they want to carve out some time during the day to have lunch with their kid or read them a story. And all of those things make perfect sense. So for everybody listening, hope you're talking to your parents and asking them what they're looking for, and then being able to find those places, make those adjustments to make everybody's day just a little bit easier. And finally, I'd say just general empathy and understanding right now. As people leaders, sometimes we get the rap of being the policy people, the police. I think now's a really good time for all business leaders, especially us, to model empathy from the top. We're all human. We're all going through this right now. So it's a really nice time to just exercise kindness.
I love that. Those concepts of empathy and kindness sound ethereal, but they're not. You're talking about codifying them in policies that clarify for people how flexibility should be accepted. And,
right.
And writing down how and when to respond to Slack is not a small thing. That is actually a huge thing to clarify what the expectations of your staff are. That's a great point. So I have a difficult question, I think, as a follow-up.
Oh, good.
So I'm thinking about, especially in the stage that Maven Clinic is in this fast-growing startup stage that you're in, where you're managing all of the flexibility components that you need for your staff to keep them engaged and invested, while managing up the expectations of shareholders, stakeholders, executive leadership team. And I'm wondering how you negotiate those terms. Can those things work together? Are they in conflict? How does that show up for Maven Clinic?
Sure. Thanks for asking that. I just have to be real and say it is impossible to expect working parents to perform at the same level they had been when childcare was available. but it also doesn't mean you have to compromise results either. And I think that's what you're asking, right? How do you walk that balance? And I don't claim to be a perfect expert at this, but I do think that what we've learned over the past 7 months is focusing on results and outcomes instead of focusing on process or face time or hours really goes a long way. Being able to tell people, this is what you need to do it however you need to get it done, that keeps you sane, right? And that might feel uncomfortable for some companies, but I think now's the time to kind of stretch and feel a little bit uncomfortable. So making sure that you're setting clear individual objectives and goals, so you're empowering everyone, right? Including your working parents, but non-parents too, in order for them to be productive. And I guess the final thing I'll say on that is, don't forget the importance of managers, right? We talk a lot about the employers, right? That's us, and the employees too, but there's this whole other group of people who interact with employees more often every day, right? To an employee, the company is actually embodied by their manager, right? Not by me. And so how do you activate that group of people to make sure that they're thinking about this too? And something I'm so proud of, one of the many reasons I'm proud to work at Maven, is that manager training is actually one of the staples of our maternity product in particular, because we've got to help managers learn how to be there for their direct reports as they navigate these types of demands right now. It's just an extraordinary time.
So interesting. Thank you so much for saying that and for clarifying for us. We have a concept at my company we call impact over hours. And I love that you are echoing that, and that's a mantra that you all practice there, along with grace. Those two things are very together.
Thank you.
Okay, Caitlin, I have to come to you next. You are an expert in culture building. You coach business leaders on building inclusive organizations. And so now is the moment. Now is the moment for inclusion. And we're seeing members of our workplace communities hurting. We've seen racial injustice. We've talked about caretaking crisis. There's a lot going on for our people. And so knowing that you help founders build these inclusive cultures, I'm so curious what trends you're seeing among entrepreneurs who are building bridges out of 2020.
Yeah, this year has been a doozy, hasn't it? I really appreciate that you say building a bridge out of. That implies that there is some sort of future that is bright and something to look forward to. And I agree. I am in the same position and mindset as you. So yeah, for me, I will give this through the lens of my work and my personal mission or my personal directive, which is really, really clear. And that is, it is as simple as supporting women, particularly Black and brown women right now, mothers, parents, and caregivers. So how do I do that through my work, and what am I seeing out there? Is complicated. I think that's the easiest way to say it. 2020 is complicated. It is complex. And so being able to kind of distill that down through my personal lens is that, and my sphere of impact or influence is one, to coach founders to hire, retain, and truly support these folks that I just mentioned. 2, funding new companies led by these incredible people. And 3, ensuring that all products reflect their voices and their perspectives. So one of my biggest fears through this pandemic and through the social injustice and all of the incredible movements that are happening right now, particularly here in America, are really is the fact that so many women, because of their caregiving duties, are dropping out of the workforce. And my biggest fear is not only the gender and underrepresented minority wage gap, sliding back, going back in time, losing all that progress that our mothers and grandmothers made for us, but it's also removing their voice from the room. Even if that is only for, the temporary. And remember, our temporary started as a few weeks, and it's built into the multi-month cycle that we're in with no real clear end in sight. And so it's about coaching founders. It's about funding new companies led by women and caregivers in particular, and then ensuring that every single product that comes into my world still accurately reflects those voices and those perspectives. So what are the trends that I'm seeing? I'll start again with optimism and share that what I'm seeing more than anything is care and curiosity. coming from our leaders and from our founders. And a deep search for empathy, compassion, and kindness. Really just, if our founders do not have the perspective themselves, they are asking. And so my phone has been ringing off the hook. My inbox is completely unmanageable, starting from March, of just around what do we do? And then I would say, if I were to break it down, at the early stage, when a company is younger in its life cycle, it's actually a lot easier. The coaching is very, very different. Because they're still building and weaving that fabric of their culture and architecting their DNA. And so it's easy to pause and reflect on what we have in place, and then how to build and grow on that so that we can build this, sustainable, thriving organization for the long haul. These companies are still hiring, and so they can be really mindful about that. They're still setting their basic policies. And so that is a lot of the really, really fun work that just comes with, okay, how do we design this when the future is unclear, the next economy is unclear. The mid to larger stage companies they really are in crisis, and unfortunately, a lot of that crisis is falling on the shoulders of the people and culture teams. And so my heart goes out to every operator sitting in a company that is trying to manage through not only the organizational debt, if they haven't been minding or taking care of their inclusion and diversity policies and practices over the last period, but they really are in it right now, because even just the listening sessions that were held, if your company was brilliant enough to have those listening sessions back in March, that data is just wrong. It's outdated. And so as the crisis unfolds in front of us, as we learn more about the virus, as we learn more about our economy, as though the world of politics here in America continue to surprise us every single day, it really is about connectivity. And really getting those data points. And more importantly, I love that Carson said, you can't forget about the managers. There is so much responsibility falling to our managers, because that is primarily how people are interacting with their workplace. It's a one-on-one Zoom. We have our group meetings, but it really is that the one kind of mainstay in our connectivity back to work is through our manager versus our CEO or our leaders, right? And so equipping them with how to build individualized plans. What works for me might not work for Kara, may not work for Karsten. So really having that individualized approach to what is needed. Every home life is different. We have single caregivers. We have caregivers that have two jobs in the home. We have people who are who are at risk and are taking the pandemic very seriously. And so they have no village, even if childcare is available to them. And then everything in between. So I think that it really is about being as deeply personal as we can be. And then the trend that I'm seeing across the board that I'm actually really, really, really excited about is the final realization that people and culture and our policies and our roadmaps, including diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, cannot be built separate from our product roadmaps. And so the more we are tying our goals around diversity, around equity, around inclusion, around belonging, and all of the other wonderful things that come with the people and culture function or the people and culture experience within an organization, they are now being built and tied hand in hand with other company goals and targets. So I am feeling hopeful in the trends.
I love to hear that. Thank you for your optimism. And thanks so much for thinking about and quantifying for us these early stage businesses that have so much potential through learning and development, as well as hiring, to think about different futures, and understood that these mid-market and enterprise brands are in a really interesting spot. Well, I'll be curious to talk to Rob in just a minute. I want to first go to Kara, because Kara, you sit at such an interesting spot in the HR world. And this is really a moment for HR. If there ever was one, man, this is it. And so I'm so curious, we've talked about some of these policies and principles that organizations are considering right now. And you not only build HR policies and practices at Udemy, but you think about this more globally for the HR community as a whole, which I think is a really interesting thing to explore. So I want to come to you and ask, in the past, I think we've really considered HR a recruiting function. We have been hearing about the war for talent for a decade. And now it feels like we're moving into a moment of retention. How do we keep our people healthy? And let's not talk about thriving. Let's talk about surviving for a minute. So can you talk about how HR is being called in right now at this moment?
Yeah, this is a huge call to action for people in my position. And as Caitlin said, I'm feeling very optimistic about it. Obviously, my career has been spent advocating for the criticality of talent as the key driver for the success of a business. And here we are right now. The future of work is in our laps. And a couple of things that I think we need to do as people leaders is to have a strong point of view, is to understand the connection between what we do on the talent side and the outcomes of the business. Be unapologetic and understanding that we have to have the right people in the right seats with the right level of support, which is a critical pillar related to that. We have to have conviction as an organization around mission and vision, and again, how that ties to the employee experience. And then we do have to get to the minutia, things that no executive had to think about before in terms of, or had the privilege, underlying privilege, capital P, of not caring about a maternity or paternity leave, not caring about financial wellness, not caring about mental health. Not having to factor those things into a business strategy before are now front and center. And I continue to encourage people leaders to step into that role and to educate themselves. I have a group called People Tech Partners, and we are a group of people leaders of high growth companies that are looking at what are the innovative products that are coming into the market that can help us selfishly solve for these pieces. And we've seen a ton of innovation in the last 3 to 4 years around future of work, and it's getting a lot of attention. And then it's a call to action for me, for the large corporations, Rob, Unilever, in addition to those entrepreneurs who are looking for the next big thing to do to support organizations and to support talent. There's a ton of opportunity here. I think we need to recognize the shift and see it as an opportunity. And I get, again, optimistic, because if we can get to a point where we see a more holistic view of the organization and understand the true value of employees, and know, again, that our job is to help marry the friends, family, and employee with the organizational goals. Wow, there's a lot of power in that, and I get excited about it.
There is absolutely a ton of power in that, and that commitment certainly shines through. I have to ask you about Udemy as a platform, though, because it is such a unique experience. You talked earlier about democratizing skilling, and I'm thinking about what an opportunity for our caretakers to up-level, to reskill, to transform. So can you talk about how you see that shifting our talent economy?
Yeah, 100%. And just briefly, the world where we had a lot of people that could take out 4 years of their life, 6 years of their life to learn a skill and have that be a static skill that they then just operationalize over the course of a career is over. We know that the graduates this year are going to have a whole new skill set that they will need literally in 2 to 3 years in order to be successful at the next level in their career. And Udemy has our instructors that bring fresh content every day to the platform in these critical areas for upskilling. And then we, again, have millions of learners that are ready to gobble it up and educate themselves and be prepared for whatever comes next. And we all know there's a lot of uncertainty about the future, but we also know are those that are educated and those with knowledge win in these types of environments. So the uncertainty can be an opportunity for all of our workers as well. And we definitely see that at Udemy, and we are really excited to serve the global population who are ready for that opportunity.
Such an important topic. And thank you so much for thinking about that so broadly and so globally, because it really means access. This translates to access for people. Okay, so we've explored fast-growing startups. We've explored investing in especially women-founded businesses. We've talked about the role of HR and skilling. And now we're teeing it up for Rob, our big brand. We've talked a lot about this kind of this partnership required between HR, marketing, and business functions. And so I'm really interested to hear about Unilever's approach here. And I have a hunch that Rob is thinking about the long game here. So Rob, I want to come to you. I'm so curious, what is Unilever doing to promote equitable long-term policies that support parents? And what are you doing specifically to drive that mission home?
So I think to some degree it starts at your home. So let me actually frame up just what I've kind of done in my own personal life and how that's translated to my team at Unilever, and then how Unilever more broadly is engaged in this topic. So actually the last time I was on this panel, I think we were just getting used to kind of this new normal. We shared stories. I think a number of us did on like movie nights and game nights and family dinners. And, you know, I think we're just kind of getting into like the degree of how to survive and thrive in this kind of what was new normal. And so the biggest thing that came across was the importance of being flexible, adaptable, and just being able to go with the flow. And so, you know, since then, but actually, if I think about it, since then, at that panel, my wife was watching. And so what's funny about that was I was on the panel with Eve Rodsky, who wrote the book, Fair Play. And so my wife sat on the panel and she heard me talk and she said, "Don't get me wrong, babe, you do a good amount and you're super helpful, but I really think you way overestimate the value you bring to the house and what you do." And so she started reading this book, Fair Play.
Nice.
And she started underlying passages, and then about a month later, we sat down for a glass of wine, and we ended up with this. I just want to show everybody, like, panel. Like, we ended up with this big chart now.
Yeah,
my name is Bear, Rob, her name is Lori, and we have all these different things. Fair Play in our house. So I realized while I was helpful in doing a decent amount, I really were decent amount, actually, not nearly maybe as I thought. And so I'm disappointed Eve is not on the panel because I owe her a lot. Not so much.
Panel. She's coming up next. So
okay. You can let her know that she's changed my life for the better, of course, for the better.
We love to hear it.
So I think about the family and then kind of to my team at Unilever, you know, we have a number of new parents on my team and parents in general. I think when COVID first hit, we were very focused as a team on making sure that we recognized the world was upside down, and we started thinking about our meeting schedules, how to adjust for school and naps and all those things. And of course, understand we have working parents, and I can really understand that because obviously with my wife, and so consistently over the last 6 months, though, I think as we begin to really adapt to this new normal, is we've continued to go back to the team, have honest and open conversations about what can we do differently, and it's everything from you know, representing at different meetings, whether we have a lot of early morning global calls, so now not everyone goes. A group of people go, report back to the broader team, tweaking our schedule. We developed through the agile ways of working a Kanban, which lists and provides visibility and accessibility to everybody to talk about specific topics. And if they miss something, what was covered. And then just ongoing communication. I think, listen, it's ultimately a work in progress. And we're now facing with the summer over and now the kind of kids getting back to school and the days getting shorter and the days getting colder to come. I think there's a whole physical and mental well-being that we're really much tapped into, which I think Unilever broadly now has very much focused on. And as an organization, we've done an amazing job of really honing in through surveys, through focus groups, through parenting groups, understanding what are the needs of our employees and families. And certainly the physical well-being is important, but I think you heard it before, mental well-being. And so we're actually having these one-on-one conversations with your manager to talk about what do you need in this time, and making a host of resources, whether it be office equipment that we're now bringing to people's homes or childcare services or tutors, or just adjusted ways of working, I think we've been very much embracing and kind of all in.
What do you need right now? What a big question, and so kind to ask that. I want to go to where Caitlin teed us up on this idea about brand strategy, product strategy, mixing with people strategy. And Unilever has taken such an interesting approach. If I think about Dove Men Plus Care, by the way, I was just watching the YouTube channel on potty training. So thank you so much for that, because I got to do that with the little one here. Well, within 9 weeks. So that was really helpful. I'm just so curious, Rob, about this strategy around building brand equity in such a different way. I mean, you have the opportunity of just being a product company, but you've invested so deeply in policy work and in people. And I'm curious if you can help all the folks that are listening that are trying to bring a similar approach to their businesses and they want to quantify the business impact of that approach. Can you share with folks how you've negotiated that at Unilever?
Yeah, so I think it really starts with your culture. I think you need to have a culture built around purpose. And so, while I rattled off a bunch of things we're doing in the COVID times, this engagement was pre-pandemic as an organization. We have a strong maternity program, and we've actually a couple of years ago launched a strong paternity program because we recognized, Dove Men Plus Care has sponsored that and really driven that with a pledge of $1 million for fathers and helping them get time off, because we recognize from a culture perspective and the importance of starting fresh in the journey with a mom and dad in a kind of an equal setting. So paternity has been a huge part of our focus, both within the organization as well as a purpose that we've kind of brought. In fact, last year I was in DC meeting with congressional leaders with a group of us from Unilever talking about paternity leave on behalf of Dove Men Plus Care. And I think that's just one example of a purpose-driven organization. We know and we see that brands built around purpose, they simply do better. And we have real data because it's a journey for a number of our brands. But, some of our brands are stronger in purpose. Some are still in that work in progress. And we've seen over the last number of years, those brands with purpose at the center simply do better. Consumers engage them differently. And we're actually able to engage consumers in a much more meaningful way. And I think that's such an important part that really starts from your culture. And I think that's something we've done really well at Unilever. In fact, now we're in the midst of a program we called United for America. And again, it's a mix of culture and how you connect to the service of consumers. But we launched this program called United for America in the early days of the pandemic. We've, over the course of the last number of months, given $25 million of products and services and support. But we really focused on kind of those most vulnerable in need. And some of the things we've really seen both in our own organization and then translating it out is the impact of what they're calling, I think the New York Times said, the She Session. So working with an NGO called Luminary and sponsoring over 250 fellowships, 50% of which are women of color, to really help women engage and adapt to this time. The second big topic we've seen, which we've all experienced as parents, is the digital divide and kids learning from home and what that does to both the kind of a working environment and how our kids manage. And so, if you look at some schools in some cities, I think it was Houston, less than half the student population there had access to remote learning. I mean, I think we take for granted. And so Unilever has been on the forefront of that because we believe doing good it will ultimately do good for us. And so that's a really important part. But again, it starts with the culture. And that last point around that is we created a day of service in this United for America. And all of our employees across the country on May 21st, took the day for volunteering, and we partnered with over 96 partners, as well as from media to our law firms to our supply chain partners, and we all engage in working with organizations across the country to give back. And I think it really starts with your culture, and I've heard a lot about that from the other speakers, which I think is right on. It's the culture, and then that allows you to bring kind of meaning and purpose to your brands.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so I have 47 ideas out of this panel of things that we can take back to our organizations. Not only that, but the way in which you articulate it, you articulate the value, help us all turn into change agents. So I really appreciate that. We're getting close on time, but I want to ask kind of a popcorn question to this panel because we've really heard about purpose. We've heard about flexibility and grace and quantifying impact. And we are really focused on the caretaker population. But I'm also wondering how we lean into this idea of allyship. And so my question for this panel, and feel free to jump in, is, how do we build these policies so that we don't leave non-caretaking employees or non-parent employees behind? How do we build these strong allyships?
I'm happy to take that. From my perspective, it's about caring for the whole employee. And first of all, when you think about what does a caretaker need, it's often very similar to what a non-caretaker needs, right? I don't think anybody loses when we take care of a population that needs extra support. And for example, at Udemy, we brought in new resources over the summer around mental health support. We enhanced our mental wellness benefits. We enhanced our financial wellness benefits, and we enhanced our medical benefits to add additional telehealth support. So all those things were mission critical for caretakers in a time of crisis, but also had a really positive effect on the broader employee population. So I think looking at things holistically and understanding that when we serve those that have the biggest challenges, we're serving everyone else at the same time, and it is really important. And as Rob and everyone else was reinforcing, this is a culture of caring that you create. And if you have a culture of caring internal to your organization, it extends to your customer. And that's a level of customer engagement. And that's the special sauce that you can't get in a company that doesn't have that level of empathy. So this is the true connection. When we see ourselves as one community among our customers internally, and we understand that serving each other actually creates success overall, it becomes, again, very powerful.
Any other thoughts on allyship?
I mean, so we have what we call a multi-stakeholder model at Unilever. So it's not just the people who own shares in Unilever, it's the employees, it's our customers, and of course, ultimately, it's the consumers that we serve. And I think that holistic view that Kara was referring to, I think, is really the most important thing in kind of building the culture that breeds engaged employees that ultimately will pass that engagement and passion on to the business and the end consumer.
Mm-hmm. It feels like you all have so much passion about this topic that I'm sure it's contagious and that folks are attracted to the mission no matter of their caretaking status. So thank you for sharing that, for your thought leadership. I don't want this discussion to end. I have so many more questions for you. So for anyone that's on the line, there's been a bunch of questions come in through chat we haven't had time for. Please use the hashtag caregiving and work and tag any of us. I'm at Bria Sturmer. Feel free to tag us and we'll keep this discussion going because there's so much more to learn from these thought leaders. I'm so appreciative of you and your time. And thank you to Mother Honestly for letting us have this deep and important discussion about caring for our caretakers at work. So